Croeso. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Commissioners meeting, 13th of February. Number one, any apologies for absence, please, Mia?
Yeah, Keith Fire, Duffin Monaghan, Alison Reid, Christian Hadfield, Ian Moore, and Kate Harmon from William.
Okay, thank you very much. Any declarations of interest, please? Only those already registered. I don't have any chairperson's announcements. Point 4, matters to be raised from subcommittees. Do we have any matters arising from subcommittees, please? No? Okay, and then point 5, to receive the minutes of the Board of Commissioners 5th of December. Any matters of advocacy or anything raised from anyone, please? Okay, the Finance and Audit Committee on the 19th of September. Any matters of advocacy or anything arising, please? And in that case, the Extraordinary Finance and Audit Committee of the 20th of November. Anything, any matters of advocacy? Okay. In that case, point 6, update on outstanding actions on page 31 of your agenda. So
the action on page 32,
yeah,
which is the strategic performance indicators, that's in the agenda today.
okay. Thank you.
And then there's an update on page 33, Wayne's in the room, an update provided about the Welsh language standards. I don't know if there's any questions about that update. Kirsty?
I think the update is really helpful, and I think we can close that action.
Okay, thank you, Kirsty.
Thank you.
The next two updates are closed, and then it's the revenue budget consultation.
So that was an update which I think Commissioner Coults requested in relation to the increase in uniform costs.
Yes.
I think, Lisa, you were going to hope to provide a verbal update.
Yes, I got some detail from the team. Two things with the uniform query raised by Carl initially. So between 20 and 25% for both the managed care package, which is currently provided by Elise. So that's gone up by 25,000. So that's part of it. They do a good job with us in terms of collecting the kit, turning that around, particularly relevant now that we've got contaminants issue with us. And they also stitch up and do some repairs as well as the cleaning of our gold kit. And the second part, then the largest part, about 140,000, the increase related to next year's technical refresh of corporate wear, otherwise known as the navy rig that you'd see our grey personnel walking around with. So we didn't increase next year's budget for business as usual in that area, because the plan is with the new rig that's coming in around June, is everybody will be given a full complement, and there should be no other need to draw off that budget in the year. So, you know, whatever they decided is role specific, whether it's 2 trousers, 4 tops, that's it for the year. We've also invested in 2 additional pieces to help us manage some efficiencies in that area, which may be forthcoming in the next 12 to 24 months. So we've got something called a sizer app. So you know that takes all the measurements up front, and that integrates then with something called the Hunter Pack, which is an electronic feature which will look at ordering capabilities. So it was a really good demonstration from the company. They will give us a dashboard, and also they look at hotspots. So if there's any sort of high ordering levels, it'll do some reporting functions for us in terms of, is it by station, is it by individual, and it'll also do cut-off points for us. So if we are saying the allowance on a particular item per person for a year is half a dozen, it stops ordering beyond that. So there's some intelligent sort of parameters we can put into the system there to try and manage that. So anything above that would come through then as an exceptional item, and of course it draws our attention to those pieces. So I think those 2 things are a step in the right direction in terms of modernising the provision there for corporate uniform.
I'm really pleased to hear about those checks and balances, because, you know, that is that sends a message about efficiency savings.
Yes.
Carl?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think that's absolutely right. And having been to an organisation before where we seem to be buying torches on a not regular basis, maybe I'm a bit
Yeah.
carried. I absolutely agree. And I suppose, so really then the extra money there is because we're really kind of going to a new level, new kit. So
Tech
that's-
refresh.
yeah.
Everybody gets new straight
Right.
away. That's tech refresh,
Yeah.
as opposed to that budget for about 500,000 in previous years. It just accommodates as and when requests come through, because of course they've all got the base uniform requirement, so it's losses, wear and tear, that sort of thing. So yeah, we tried not to grow the budget in this particular area any more than we needed to.
On the contaminants, was that an additionality because of the requirement on contaminants? And I guess that must affect the whole sector.
It came in, the care and pay, managed care
Yeah.
requirement contract came in about 5 years ago now, so it's before, it predates contaminants. But they are big kit, and they're the gold kit, so it's difficult, you couldn't put them in a washing machine on station. So it was just about getting the right care, because there were certain conditions with the gold kit about it was supposed to last 10 years, but also the other proviso was it was no more than about 40 washes
Yeah.
because of the yes,
Yeah.
it's quite specialist sort of fire retardant
Yeah.
qualities. It would just degrade after that. So of course we really wanted to maintain the assets and make sure that they were looked after properly, and this company sort of meets the washing requirements
So
there.
on that then, if people are deemed contaminated now when they weren't before, that increases the number of washes per plant,
Yes.
which means there's a higher usage.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so it may not necessarily mean, if managed correctly, it may not necessarily mean the purchase of more kits in the system, but the flow of kits through the system needs to be faster.
I noted yesterday that we had an update on the hunter sizing issue that was raised by the unions in terms
Yes.
of data protection, and all that's going to be closed off as well.
Yes, it has, yeah.
Okay, good. All right, let's move on to the next point then, and this is Jake, yeah, the consultation report on the county, please.
Yeah, just an update on then. There's been with direction from the Chief Fire Officer, we've paused it, we've withdrawn it from the budget for the time being, because when we've done the financial setting, there's more operational priorities that we need to deal with
Absolutely.
rather than the establishment of the canteen. So yeah, so the work's not been lost. We're going to pause it, may review it maybe next year into the budget
Yeah.
for 27-28.
Okay,
So we'll see where that goes in the future. So that there won't be a paper going to commissioners for review.
Excellent. Any
So
comments from the other commissioners? Carl?
Just to thank Jake for the work, 'cause I know you did a lot of work to actually
Yeah.
understand actually what was the art that possible on that one, and it may come to some use at a later time, depending what we do with the whole estate piece, but
Yeah.
it's
Right.
the work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, thank you.
Okay, yeah, line drawn under that then, thank you. Next two are closed, and on the next page,
I have an update. for
health
you,
and
Chair.
safety, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so I spoke to Chris Hadfield, sent his apologies today. The health, safety and wellbeing strategy is being planned to be finalised by the 1st of March, which will time well for the papers for the end of March for the commissioners. So we propose to have available, it will go to decision-making board first, and then it will go to the commissioners meeting at the end of March.
Just would there have been any financial implications in the revision to the strategy? And if so,
I don't know yet, because I haven't
they
seen
they
it.
wouldn't have been factored in for the next
No.
budget cycle?
No. Not if now, that is being no,
Yeah.
no.
I will ask the question.
Yeah. But the way in which things are now reorganised is the ask for the money comes first.
Yeah.
And then the ask for everything else comes afterwards.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I think they've got a manager in that department who's very
Yes.
proactive, and I think it's basically re-energised.
Mm.
And also, you know, there's a lot of work at the moment undergoing because we've got the HSC inspection
Yeah.
coming. We know that's going to
Yeah.
end at some point.
Yeah.
So, I think it will be a very thorough piece of work. I just go.
Because it just might require the system is more
Yeah.
clear.
Yeah.
but in terms of,
Mm.
in the light of the HSC inspection, although we stick to the process that we now have of the ask for money comes first,
Yeah.
nevertheless, we need to look at it in the context of the forthcoming inspection. So,
Yes.
you know, to add that into the mix. Yeah? Okay, thank you. Right, all the other actions are closed, so thank you very much. That's that item. Item 7, so the Deputy Chief Fire Officer, please, to present the organisational update for us. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Chair. I'm obviously presenting this on behalf of the Chief Fire Officer today, who's absent. So if I just take you through, assuming everybody's read the report, I'll just touch on the highlights and happy to take any questions
Yeah,
as we go
thank you.
through. So the new senior recent appointments in the ELT and SLT have now all but one arrived. So we're expecting our last appointment on Monday with our new area manager. And it's good to see a period of stabilisation and settlement in the people in those roles. So we very much look forward to welcoming our new area manager, Mark, on Monday to finish off those appointments.
And you'll have Liam.
And Liam, of course, who has been delayed slightly, hasn't he, now, end of February, we're expecting.
23rd.
So if we move on to the Chief Officer priorities, so there is a move from Chief Fire Officer to look at reviewing our current strategy that was reviewed last in December 2025. So sessions have been scheduled over Q4 to make sure that we are in line with where we want to go. There is very much a feeling now that we're moving from the period of satisfying recommendations and sort of putting foundations into where do we want to take the service now. We are more on a kind of level footing, really, and that's an exciting thing, especially for this senior leadership team,
Next phase.
to be able to move into the next phase.
Yes,
Absolutely.
great.
So there's a lot of optimism in the air in terms of how we're approaching that moving forward to long-term strategy. Short-term priorities, to give you a brief overview, the CRMP/fire cover review remains top priority. So we are still on track to deliver a consultation piece ready for summer. So July at the latest, we'll be ready to do a draft consultation with the public. Interestingly now, we are in the process of receiving feedback from ORH around the fire cover review. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll be digesting that and we will be in a better position in the springtime to, in line with my previous point around what does the future look for South Wales Fire Rescue Service, which is also data-led based on the work we've commissioned there. Thematic review recommendations, they remain on track, assuming we will be completed by Q4. The only point to note there are that some of the recommendations, they have an element of BAU to them. So what we will do is we'll make sure that those BAU items are factored into the processes that service has, whether it's new programs or just the performance management framework, to ensure that they're not cut off and forgotten about. We will do that piece of work to make sure they cross over into BAU, essentially. Fatigue management remains one of the priorities from the Chief Fire Officer and also the ELT. There's a phased approach to this. So we know that there are longer term decisions that need to be looked at in terms of how we configure our workforce. But in the interim, we are working through, under the direction of our Director of Service Delivery, ensuring that our policies for people who are operational are fit for purpose and have measures in, at least in the interim, to ensure that we are doing all we can to comply with fatigue management. So that starts everything from the principal officer's rota right through to dual contracts and other areas of business that we need to make sure we've got checks and balances in place. So it remains a risk, it remains on the risk register, but we are working through that as a phased approach to ensure we've got mitigation in place. Sickness group has been established and work is ongoing in that respect. And we will be using our new performance management framework to ensure that we can consistently monitor the effect that's having on sickness. Moving to HMI, again, remains one of the top 7 priorities from Chief Fire Officer. One of the areas that we will be doing towards the end of February is conducting a bit more of a deep dive on prevention and protection, 2 areas that have been highlighted by the HMI. It's quite timely with the arrival of our new area manager, who'll be taking over those two priority areas. There are elements of IT and software that I think we need to focus on more in those areas, but also we will be doing a gap analysis of the current strategies to ensure that in line with NFCC and other fire and rescue services, we are covering the bits that we need to cover with best practice on those strategies. People services review is underway. That's going well. There's a lot of stakeholder engagement that's been taking place over the last few weeks. The Director of People Services will be receiving a draft high-level overview on the 20th of February. The intention being that will form the basis of a committee paper a people committee paper on the 19th of March. So we should have some information and some outputs really ready for the next people committee. Director of Services. And then obviously the knock on from that is the target operating model, which will we sequence so it wasn't at the same time. So that work will be commenced by the 31st of March 2026. So we look forward to seeing the results of that as well. So moving on to updates in relation to operations, we have experienced I would suggest a significant trend here around fatal dwelling fires, unfortunately, very tragically.
Yes.
You know, just as a new member of staff in the 8 weeks I've been here, we've now had 5 fatal house fires, which for me does stand out. And,
Yes.
you know, thankfully the work we've done on our performance management has allowed us to highlight that. And that has become a formal trend in the organisation now. So we will be meeting on the 23rd, I think it is, Wayne, is it? The 25th, first strategic performance management meeting where that data will stand out. And the intention is now to commission a review into the spike in domestic house fires essentially that have led to a fatal outcome.
Will you be looking at demographics, Adam? Because, you know, we live in one of the poorest parts of the UK. You know, the trends are that we live in a place where, you know, we have a much of an aging population, you know, domestic issues where, you know, older houses and, you know, lack of, you know, new electrical items. You know, it's a bit of a perfect storm, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Particularly in the South Wales valleys, you've
Yeah.
got huge issues there. So unlike, you know, in your previous authority, we've got that intensive demography
absolutely.
of older people. So
No, Commissioner, absolutely. We will. We know anecdotally there are risk factors that are prevalent in all of these fires. You know, they are all subject to fire investigation as you'd expect, and the processes that follow. But what we're really keen to do here, through the way we've captured our data, is produce a review of those risk factors, and more importantly, what is the knock-on from that. So how we will then target and focus our prevention activities and our strategy onto the risk factors that matter the most in the South Wales Fire and Rescue Services area, essentially. So that's why we want to commission it formally through the performance management framework, and then we will bring it back to the relative oversight group to ensure that you've got sight of where we go next from this. But the kind of the assessment from the Chief Fire Officer and obviously and myself is that this does stand out. This is a tragic kind of pattern that we don't want to see. So essentially, what is it that we can do as a knock on to ensure that we're doing, you know, we're targeting, you know, ultimately to prevent these fires happening in the first place.
I'll call Kirsty in, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Adam. I really welcome the commitment to carry out the review. I just wonder whether you could give us a flavour of exactly what the review will engage with and the timescales for it. So you've very clearly explained to Commissioner Wilcox about, you know, what you would hope to be the outcomes and how that will influence strategy. I'm just wondering, what are the components the review will cover and the timescale for that work to be done, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the review will take place over Q4. So ideally, what we want is the outcomes and the new strategy, or the revisions to our strategy, to be in place for the new financial year, starting Q1. Ultimately, as I've mentioned previously, there will inevitably be operational aspects which we can pick up through debriefs and our normal ways of working, but the review will focus primarily on prevention and those associated risk factors. So I think we're all aware, well, we all have an idea of what those risk factors are, but reaching those risk factors and really understanding how we can engage and access is a key part of that. So we'll be looking to ensure that is what that review kind of centres on. It's a prevention review rather than a response review, and it's really about accessing and ensuring that we can engage with the people that need us the most before the fire occurs. That's the heart of what we're trying to do here. But in terms of timescales, like I say, I'll commission this formally on the 25th, and I anticipate it occurring over Q4, ready to launch the new financial year, essentially. And it works in line with our revised structure, with our new area manager coming in to head up prevention and protection as well. So,
Great.
So I think this broad thing here for me, yes, we do need to have an analysis on this, but if we had discussions about the debrief policy and the work in community safety, because this initiative is striking me as top down. Where is it coming bottom up from the to say to them, saying we've got a number of people involved in this, and how do we raise it rather than how do we direct it down? And I guess it's about the broader debriefing in general, which would have, the debrief of an incident such as these fatal fires would have been broader than the fire crews turned up at X, Y, Z. It would have been the circumstances involved. It should have been feeding in. And I guess that's making sure we've got these things looped in, that we can close all these loops.
Absolutely, Commissioner. I think that's a really valid point, and part of what I would envisage the review revealing or detailing is how exactly that. It's essentially when a fatal fire does occur, the review is not based on operations. The review is based on, you know, could we have accessed this previously? We do have arrangements in place at the moment which cover part of that. I think there's improvements that we can make to that in terms of front loading that, showcasing it, and actually getting from the situation where the fires occurred to what are the tangible knock-on improvements we're going to make, and then holding us to account for that. Essentially is what I want this review to deliver.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, and I suppose there's a bit of an offer really. I think we've all kind of, Matt and I talked about it, isn't it? When you look at the kind of individuals that have tragically lost their lives in this, there's a certain criteria, isn't it? And that you kind of roughly fit in within that, and that's really, really sad. I think there is an opportunity to use us, certainly with the partner agencies, you know, because we know, don't we, when you look at social engagement, police engagement, other agencies engagement with vulnerable individuals, you know, if that is something we can help post-review to finally get that group together, you've got a group of commissioners here that might be able to support you on that one a little bit more, because they have a part to play as well, don't they?
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
Definitely, yeah, really benefits.
okay. Yeah, well, a lot out of that point, Adam, but I mean, I guess, you know, of all things we talk about, isn't they are.
Yeah.
This is core business, isn't it?
Absolutely.
This is absolutely core business. Okay, so please.
Yeah, so just moving on again, in terms of operations, we gave an update last time, again, after the tragic Switzerland nightclub fire, and some of the actions. Yeah, some of the actions that the South Wales Fire and Rescue Service has taken as a result of that, because we are keen to ensure we take account of national trends and national events that have happened. To give you an update in terms of where that has led, essentially, is we now know that we have identified 12 venues in our area that have potential risk in relation to basements.
Okay.
So what we've done is we will be prioritising those and conducting full visits and audits on those premises as we move through. But I think the the work that was undertaken by the team, and thank you to our service delivery team that have been out there proactively ensuring that we are prioritising based on national events, you know, some of the risks that we've got in our area.
Yeah.
And, you know, understanding the risk makeup as well is really important. So again, thank you to the teams that have done that, and yeah, we'll conduct that work as we go through.
It was reported on the news this morning that this nightclub had not had any kind of inspection since 2019. You know, again, that's just what I heard on the news. I mean, that's really quite shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show, again, in line with the previous point as well, the importance of prevention and protection.
Yeah.
You know, we need to make sure that our operations are absolutely on money and where they as best as they can be. But we know prevention and protection is what really saves lives.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Yeah.
So, Brenda, this will now feature part of the risk-based inspection program because they'll be threaded in.
Yeah.
And these are known places which have licenses, but then in the underground music scene, there are these pop-up things which just happen on a Thursday or a Saturday.
Yeah.
And so I guess it's about our officers having the capability to put prohibition notices in.
Yeah.
Enforcement notice.
I think there's a real element of partnership working as well, like and being able to afford those relationships with police, local authorities, those sorts of things, to understand that we are better past the information when these pop-up venues or these pop-up incidents occur. But
they've got good relationships as well with the licensing agencies as well. And as part of that, what we've ensured there's a CCTV fire safety officer on every rota group now as well. So again, those after hours calls, prohibitions, that is able to be worked through as well as part of it.
Yeah, that's good, Mark, because, you know, the local government framework over the past, 10 to 15 years has been real pressure points on certain areas, in licensing, in trading standards, all those kinds of areas have been cut to the bone through the austerity agenda. Kirsty.
Thank you very much, and I'm very grateful to the staff that have proactively done the work to identify these venues and areas. forgive me for not understanding, and please put me right. But later on, one of our items, we will be having feedback from a consultation, and some of the feedback around that has been about the confidence in staff carrying out site-specific inspections, and having concerns about whether they are confident in knowing how to do that well, how to use that information. And I'm just wondering, trying to triangulate really. So we've done this discrete piece of work, but some of our staff are saying that they feel they don't have the skills really to undertake site-specific inspections and capturing that risk appropriately. So just trying to triangulate really about this particular instance, but what are we doing to upskill everybody that we need to be able to carry out these site-specific inspections appropriately?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. So I'll answer very quickly, and then I'll hand over to our Director of Service Delivery as well to supplement the answer. But essentially, the qualification required for full inspections is quite a lengthy process. It takes many years to gain that qualification. So what you'll inevitably find is we'll have a number of people on their journey for gaining that qualification. But we do have level 4 trained inspectors that can do it. So the highest risk places that we go, we will ensure we've got level 4 inspectors that conduct the inspection. But I would expect that as that qualification is gained, the confidence will grow in those inspecting officers to be able to do it as part of a kind of induction process as well towards gaining the full qualification. But I don't know if Matt has anything you want to add.
Just add some further reassurance for the commissioners as part of that as well. There's a full retraining programme now underway. It's been underway since the end of last year regarding retraining all crews around SSRIs. Commissioner, around that, there's a quality assurance metric methodology being in place as well. But to layer on top of that again, now all crew and watch managers will undergo level 1 fire safety training as well. So we are enhancing their understanding of fire safety, which will inherently link into the SSRI programme.
Okay, thank you very much for that explanation. Anton, please.
Thank you. So the next 2 points I think we've covered in terms of other agenda items. So I'll move on very quickly to the Workforce Planning Board, which is very aptly timed as we've got our first one sitting this afternoon. But this is a board which we put together quite recently. It will be chaired by myself. And what we're aiming to do here is to really focus now on our succession plan and our workforce planning in terms of not only the skills and attributes that we need in certain roles, but also how we can make efficiencies and how we can use resources as efficiently as possible, essentially. So we know that there is some of the issues that we've experienced recently has been to perhaps a fragmented approach to how we do workforce planning. What we're aiming to do now is really centralise this and put some real scrutiny and oversight on the decisions that we make as a service to ensure that we grow, develop, and organisationally we can have the right people in the right places with the right skills, essentially. Yes. And that covers everything, as I said, from talent, skills that we give people, but also to how we can best use the resources that we've got. So the panel, it's quite a high level panel. It's a strategic panel, and there may be, as we go through, like subcommittees that form out of that to ensure that we've got the right level of decision being made and empower our staff. But I think at the moment what we're looking for is to centralise things and provide some real strategic oversight to how the organisation is developed, essentially moving forwards.
Good.
So we are very much looking forward to this afternoon to our first board, and I do think having been here for 2 months now, I do think it's needed. I think that we've got I think we're a bit sporadic in how we make some of these decisions. So what we're essentially going to do is we're going to try and refine that and just provide some central oversight to workforce planning moving forwards. And the last point that I will sort of leave the Chief Officer briefing on, which is a very positive one, is the establishment of our new Leadership Connect initiative, which I mentioned briefly in the last Board of Commissioners. We've been doing a lot of work on putting the infrastructure in place behind that. But I'm pleased to say on the 25th of February, we'll be launching our first session, which is essentially taking our middle managers and breaking them down into smaller cohorts where members of ELT on a rotational basis have committed to spending time with them in an informal setting, talking about strategy, direction, engagement, and really ensuring that yes, we've got some strong ambitions for South Wales Fire and Rescue Service. We've got some, real ground to cover and things that we think can make a real difference, but it will require everyone to understand what it is that we need to achieve, and how they will be supportive and how we can support each other essentially from everybody in the organisation. And I think that for me starts with the leadership. So ELT have committed on a weekly rotational basis in pairs. We will be meeting with the middle managers to ensure that they are supported, have the right direction, and have an opportunity to engage with us as well, and ensure that we can answer their questions and make sure that we are essentially one leadership team leading service together. That's the ambition, and I look forward to this starting because I've seen it work elsewhere where it kind of bridges that gap between what essentially can cause a bit of disjointment and fragmentation amongst the leadership cadre. So that's starting week after next.
No, that's really good to hear, because you middle managers in any organisation, that's where the real change
Absolutely.
happens. They're the movers and shakers.
Yeah.
Was that the end of your?
That concludes the brief.
Thank you. That's really great initiative about the leadership thing. I think it's really, really important. I should have raised it at the time. I was waiting to the end to raise it. The issue on sickness.
Yeah.
We've had a number of work groups over the years looking at this, and we've not got particularly far in that. I just wonder whether we're ambitious enough in the time frame, because we're talking about delivering in Q1 and Q2. The end of Q2 is November. That seems a long time to run with a very high level of sickness in the organisation to have it tailed in. I wonder if there'll be more of a phasing in this, because a number of us work in other organisations where sickness levels here are through the roof.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Commissioner. I think it links back to the previous point you made around fatigue management. So this is not a one size fits all approach. That this will be a phased. There are things that we can do short term which will start to make a difference, but some of this work is structural changes and policy changes potentially to how we deal with it. So I think in order to satisfy that question, we could perhaps give you outside of the meeting an overview of what the plan is in terms of what is classed as an immediate action, which will start to make a difference, what is longer term, and then also how we can start to perhaps provide assurance to yourselves and eventually a fire authority around how this issue is being tackled. Because I think I would be probably promising a bit too much to say this will be sorted out by the start of the financial year, because we know I can approve it, but we won't sort it. And so that's where I think, to give you a bit more of a detailed analysis of what that entails is the work.
Who's got the lead on this? Is it Alison?
So ultimately it will be Alison, but there's a large part of this falls into service delivery.
Yeah, it's because they've been. Yeah, it's the process. It's the people.
Yeah.
Where does it sit?
So I think, obviously working with Director of People Services and Director of Service Delivery, I think we can provide a bit more of an articulate roadmap to what will kind of be the answer here. But it won't be. I don't think this is a quick fix. I think there are things we could do initially, but it will take time, like with fatigue management, to roll the phased kind of solution out for the rest.
Is that an action that we've got coming? Or is that something you're going to do outside the meeting?
I personally would propose that we brief you outside the meeting around a longer term kind of solution and what the kind of checkpoints are on the way.
Right.
But ultimately, I think for an authority to see the outcome of that is what probably needs to come back into authority meetings is, perhaps through the performance management framework, what does sickness look like and which direction it's going in?
Yeah.
And we can link what we're going to do to brief you outside of the meeting to the figures that you'll get through the performance assurance framework.
That'd be fine. Thank you.
What we can offer you some quick assurance with, they've got the figures that we're talking about since September. We are seeing the figures, while they spiked, they are dropping down now with some of the interventions that we'll pick up with you outside as well. So they are dropping down from when we were in August, September into October.
Well, interventions are starting.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that was a principal concern of yours with the sickness issues, because, it affects everyone,
It does.
not just people involved in the actual absence, knock-on effect. Okay, thank you very much for that update, Adam, and for taking our questions that we went line as well. It's greatly appreciated. If there's nothing further, Adam, I move on to our first of our two reports for decision. So 8.1 annual budget setting report, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is quite a brief report. I haven't sought to replicate what's already been put in front of commissioners in terms of the consultation piece. That came to commissioners before Christmas in line with the legislation to ask about the level that you wanted to consult with our funders on. So we've done that. 2.99 before Christmas, it hasn't changed. The uplift is still 299, even after receiving consultation responses. We got one from the Section 151 officer of the Bailiff Glamorgan, just to say they note the pressures that we've cited, and they had no further comment to add. So just the one response. The report is set out in 4 main sections. So the beginning says there's no change to the 2.99, and it actually quantifies then the level of budget set at 104 million for revenue, and of course capital of 5.5 million, because you can't set one without the other. All the capital financing charges will sit in the revenue budget for the investment piece. So, you know, we know that those two areas are inextricably linked. You cannot have an oversized capital investment budget without having a consequence in revenue budget setting. So the first section just outlines what we've just discussed. The second piece then is about the strategy. So we had a couple of sessions before Christmas as an executive leadership team. The second one, we invited commissioners to come in and we went through the detail and some scrutiny and discussion there. We discussed 26-27 position, and we also noted some work streams in traction for 27-28 also. So I think the strategy is there on how we got from the initial position of 5.3 down to 2.99, because of course that's in line with the WLGA planning assumption of 2%. But this is important, this extraction here, because this is the first step now in the efficiency plan, the efficiency and productivity plan. This is the going to colour the first year, which will be 26-27, and what we need then for 2 subsequent years. So traditionally, a medium-term financial strategy would include a detailed budget forecast. That is really difficult to do when you don't know what your staffing models are, crewing levels are, you know, so there's some key pieces of work that we need to know the answer to before you can do something meaningful. So fire company review really important there, target operating model really important. So all those review pieces coming into one. So yeah, so that's the strategy plus the first step in the efficiency plan. Also then you've just got some reminders and comparative data there on the funding piece. So the first table in blue on page 49 gives you the annual budget setting trend set against our local authority funders. You notice we started back in the trend in 22-23 as a result of the inflation crisis. Below then you've got the cumulative impact, which takes the annual shocks out of that. And you'd be pleased to know local authority cumulatively set budget at 53%. That's the upward trajectory for them. We lower at 45% in fire. So even though we've got those shocks in the last couple of years annually, overall, we are within or below what our local authority funders have received. So I think that demonstrates that we are operating within the parameters, the funding parameters that they are receiving themselves. So following on from comparative data, we've got some information on local authority impacts, what the levy looks like for them and the change. We're already way aware of the distribution mechanisms, population, that hasn't altered, so we don't need to do a deep dive on that. You've got some commentary there in terms of 26-27 doesn't include, it's a highlighting risk really to commissioners. It doesn't include any of the outcomes we just discussed for those major review pieces, because we just don't know what they are yet. So it's just bringing to your attention, we've got some things there that we need to develop. Probably going to go into effect 27-28 more than 26-27, because we won't know the outcomes of really big pieces of work like CRMP until July. So yeah, some risks highlighted there, and then finalising with that consultation piece, fairly brief as I said. So no changes, fairly straightforward. Happy to take any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Lucy. Firstly, can I thank you and your team for the preparation of this report. I understand the amount of work that goes into these things, and hopefully that will be lessened when we have our new director of finance. But at this point, you know, it was quite a task. So on behalf of the commissioners, thank you very much for that. My point is going back to the Chief Fire Officer's report, and I want this minuted. So the South Wales Fire and Rescue Service is demonstrating financial probity at a critical juncture when the new governance arrangements come into place. So giving funders greater insight into South Wales Fire finances. We held it at that 2.99 deliberately, and that is an adjunct to what came out of the Cabinet Secretary's report in terms of engagement with our funders. Well, we appear never to have had a problem with that. So now it's in black and white. I'm sure we will continue not to have an engagement. But what I want recognised is the local authorities have had a 4% uplift. We deliberately kept it at 2.99 in order to meet our needs, but we were being careful. And when we come to budget setting next year, when we will be long gone, and the new governance arrangements take place, that this is noted and remembered, that we kept it particularly carefully within parameters this year, but that may not mean the same thing next year. So, you know, attention needs to be drawn to it, because we could have asked for more, we need more, but we were being very careful. And, you know, their 1.01% extra on top, you know, was not expected. So we kept within what we thought they were going to get. But in fact, they had double what we expected. It was 4% and not 2%. So, you know, we spent a lot of time in Finance and Audit Committee and in meetings outside ensuring that we asked for what we needed. But really, you know, we've been very, very careful. And I just want them to be aware when the budget setting starts next year that we held back this year, but, you know, maybe greater asks will need to be asked in the next financial year. Would you agree, Lisa?
I would. I think it's been carefully set. We did a lot of prep work in terms of setting the budget. I think what's useful to add to that, Lady Wilcox, is a little 11th hour, we had a communication from Welsh Government in regards to specific pay pressure funding. Now we'd already drafted we'd gone out to consultation, we drafted our budget setting report, and in there then we've made our assumptions on pay, which were around 3%. So this grant funding of 620,000, it was 1.4 million for the whole of Wales Fire, was going to be made available to us. So it came conditionally in terms of we could only take it if we didn't double fund for pay pressures. Already done that, because we've got our budget setting strategy done. And ultimately, it was meant to benefit local authority funders as opposed to fire. So it was, we could only take it if we were going to reduce the fire authority levy.
So that, give with one hand to take with the other.
Something like that, yes. I think it would have made future budget setting a challenge for us, for local authority funders, because of course that 0.61%, which is what the funding represented, that would have been a deficit position to recoup for next year, because budget setting is cumulative, and you've got a hole in the base budget to recoup from funders. So our advice, and it was decided in conjunction with the 3 Fire and Rescue Service chiefs and Section 151s in Wales, was we would decline the offer of the funding because we'd already put the provisions into our budget, and we would advise them to give the money direct to local authority funders. So if they don't know already, I'm proposing to write out to local authority funders to say, this is what you should be expecting. I think our advice was to give it on top of the RSG, much like they already do for teachers, so they will feel the benefit of that. So that's in addition to that very prudent budget set at 2.99 as well. I think it's worth noting.
Okay, well, it's worth noting that they need to be reminded of that next year, that extra was given. Okay, so tell them again.
I mean, I think with local authority finance officers, once it's banked, and next year's a new year, and good work last year, they will understand on their own 2 feet when it comes round. I think that it was just a echoing part, Lady Wilcox's comments about, I think the team did really well in the absence of having the treasurer in place and all the turbulence that's gone well with that. So to get, I think, not speaking for Kirsty, but those of us that work in the NHS don't get to see very often a balanced budget. And that's one of the pressures that you have in local authorities.
Yeah.
Have a balanced budget. And I've just been part of the process where there are significant deficits in budgets being signed up. So yeah, on the one hand, it's good to see that in public service there are balanced budgets.
Well, but local authorities have to present a balanced budget by law.
Yes.
So I couldn't go 1 penny over. I had to keep those school crossing patrols by hook or by crook.
Thank you.
Carl.
So I think this is the best budget we've seen since we've been in class.
Yes.
It's the most rounded, and it's a balance between aspiration and savings. I think really good by the whole thing.
Yes.
Yeah, really positive. But I think your caution around the future is absolutely right. When I look at drugs needs to be put in
Yes.
at CRFA, they feel like big expenses.
Yeah.
So we're not going to be able to fund them from increasing all of it. So how they come through the next 12 is going to be a challenge, I think. But I think we're mindful of that one, prioritising it on the right things. I think we're in a good place, but I think they are going to create some significant cost pressures.
Yes, I agree.
But well,
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, anything further on this? Kirsty, anything? No. In that case, it's for discipline. So do I have a approval?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Lisa. So the KPIs report for discipline. Wayne, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a relatively short and concise report, but I believe an important one. So this report is seeking Commissioners' approval for a suite of strategic key performance indicators and enable the fire service to monitor its ongoing performance in a way that can be scrutinised and presented both to the senior leadership team and the Fire and Rescue Authority as themselves. At the moment, we do present progress in the 7 strategic key performance indicators set by Welsh Government. And while the service has that within house, we don't have a set of recognised strategic key performance indicators up until today. So in the last 2 or 3 months, officers have worked collaboratively among subject matter experts. We've worked with yourselves, with opinions. We've looked at the strategies, the priorities that we know will be important to us. What we've done, obviously, we published the Strategic Improvement Plan 2025-2040, along with Chief Strategy. What we looked at then was some key metrics that we could map to each one of our key strategic themes. So we can look at performance, absolute performance across the whole organisation. As you'll notice in Appendix 1 then, what that has resulted in is a list at the moment that sits at 83 indicators. What we proposed in there was to have a certain amount of indicators that are presented readily to commissioners and also the Rescue Authority. There are 49 that have been identified in that category, and they do include the 7 statutory key performance indicators of Welsh Government. And then there are an additional 34 strategic key performance indicators that will be scrutinised by the senior leadership team. But again, any issues or plans or progress identifying may be escalated at a later date. One of the things I will say then, so I know this is just what looks like a static list at the moment, and they are a list in principle. We do have a plan going forward. So if these are approved today, the immediate future, we have an SRT strategic performance meeting booked in on the 25th of February. And what we have is we have a dynamic dashboard where we have the 83 indicators within, where possible, we have the way we monitor them and when they're improving, where they need improvement, where they are performing well. Some are monitored and some are requiring data, but the Deputy Chief will chair that meeting and we'll walk through each essentially owner of strategic themes and ask them to give us an overview of where the key performance indicators are, ways they require improvement, what they're going to do about it. And that will start driving our improvement from within. There is a report due for yourselves if these are approved today of our performance against them. That will come to, I think, before the end of the financial year. We can start the next. And obviously the community risk management plan. The work is being undertaken at pace, looking at the reviews of risk against individuals, the categories within them. And obviously then the departmental strategies will be work once that work has been undertaken. And what we may find is there may be some more context that we can provide to some of these indicators. There may be indicators that we need to include after the event. But again, that will be brought to yourselves. I think it's obviously important to note as well, with this being a first draft and a first iteration, we may find we're on the 25th. But certainly the strategic leadership team KPIs, they may need to be worked, some may add, some may be added, some may not, and they may be a dynamic set of people from some of going forward. But for now, I think this is a really big step and a big opportunity for yourselves to look at the indicators in Appendix 1 and approve them. And obviously, that will give us at least a footing to start bringing you the indication of performance going forward. And I'm happy to open it up for questions there. Because again, the list is quite long. I wish we can answer the questions from there.
Well, thank you. I worked for an extremely recalcitrant head teacher once, and his favourite saying was, the biggest, in fact, he had a T-shirt that said it, the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. Fact. Okay, it did exist. Should anyone want to trace my life back to Newport in the 90s. But it's, you know, it's absolutely true. These improvements are a significant shift in what happened previously. So again, thank you for you and the team for all the work that's gone into this, because we are moving in, I think, absolutely the right direction with this. Good.
So thank you very much for this. I think, you know, we've had discussions with you about it. It's been a long time coming. It's gone from what are 7 usable reportable indicators to over 80. I know there have been other bits and pieces sat in the system, but to get it all in one place is good. And I think there's always been a danger that we wait till we've got the last I dotted and T crossed before we bring it. And actually, this will be iterative. There's going to be some of these indicators will come out, some will come in, some will be adjusted. So I think it's always going to be a work in progress. I think for me, one of the important things is that you've talked about getting the first report in, which is the baseline, so that we get a sense of where we are. And rather than wait, if we can only get 82 and we're still waiting for 82, we come with 82 and we haven't got the data for 83, which then goes to the point, because I've been told we're data rich, but we haven't got the systems that extract all this. So it might be that there are some delays in getting some of the data sets to us for these, but that shouldn't stop. You know, whatever you've got come the end of February, March, bring it. Don't bring it because it isn't complete.
Thank you, Coach. Kirsty, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Wayne, for the paper. I think this is a massive step forward in terms of accountability and transparency within the organisation, and I think it gives both us as commissioners and the incoming new governance arrangements, you know, a really, really useful tool to gain assurance. So I just want to thank everybody for their hard work. I know that it's been, you know, it has been a lot of work to get us to this point, and to agree with Vig that we can't let perfect be the enemy of the good. So we should absolutely expect this to change. And when those changes happen, it'll reflect on the maturing really of this approach to understanding the health of the organisation. So I think for me, the question is, how can we ensure, both as executives and as, you know, oversight, how can we ensure that we use the data to embed a culture of quality and also continual improvement? Because these figures will tell us something, but we will really miss the point if we just see them as standalone figures. So at the moment we're calling them KPIs, and they're going to create a performance report, but really you'd want it to be an integrated performance, quality and improvement report, because we really need to use this to drive improvements in the service. So I think it's such a welcome piece of work, but just trying to understand from our executive colleagues about how this will be used to drive continual improvement and to be able to demonstrate a quality element to our service. So not just numbers, not just how many, not just widgets, but actually the quality of what we're delivering. Thank you.
On Kirsty's point, I immediately was thinking of what we talked about earlier in the meeting about the middle leaders, the middle management. area, you know, to tie this in, to make it absolutely essential to how they think about things as well, because they'll be the drivers of improvement. Carl?
So I'm going to pick up on the back of Kirsty's point, really. First of all, I'm really, really excited, and that I don't often say that, but I am really excited. It is the right thing to do, because we talk about the health of the organisation, and those 7 measures didn't talk about the health of the organisation. They've done very, very small platforms. It's absolutely the right thing to do. But going back to my last world, there was always this methodology around what gets measured gets done.
Yeah.
And that is always a positive, but also a risk, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you can then get into a horrible situation where people try to game what they're trying to do. We're gonna have to be really careful, because that links to Kirsty's point of this should be around making the place better and healthier. Absolutely agree with Vig. You know, this will change. It should do, shouldn't it? You know, it's a moment in time. With, you know, Wayne, your team with the ALT and SLT have done a great job getting to this point. But we'll be on this stuff that we'll probably think we don't really want to measure that. It's not the right thing. Actually, we'll do something else. And how it's utilised and visible piece, I think, is now going to be, as Kirsty said, the next bit. How do we use this in the organisation to drive good behaviour, not Matt trying to gain the 999s because of how that instead of telephone call.
Yeah.
My last world,
Yeah.
you know, if you pick up the phone,
Yeah.
you got a tick.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you did bugger all with it.
Exactly.
And that, so you didn't get a gooder outcome, you just picked up the phone quicker.
Yeah.
Or you got a truck somewhere quicker, but you tweaked it
Yeah.
to make it. So it's that behaviours piece that we need to be careful already around to make sure we're delivering a better service. But
Yeah.
ever so excited around where we are.
You're excited.
That's my excitement.
I like that.
I'm peaked now for the
I
day.
like that face. That's a good thing. I've written some really good questions and some really good elements in there. And you know, if I'm really honest, we'll spend the next hour talking about this because it is something we put a lot of time into, isn't it? Recently, I think I've written down 4 points, which hopefully give you a flavour in terms of, you know, just what our response to that would be. The first one is culture. So I think we need to move into a kind of learning organisation culture and a healthy, I mean, the words you use, Carl, a healthier, better culture around performance management. I think that starts again with leadership. So I'm really kind of pleased to be able to chair that meeting, but we've invited the HMI to that meeting as well, because we want to demonstrate that this is how we do business here. So that won't be a meeting where tables are being banged, and you know, it will be a supportive, encouraging meeting where we work together to try and understand where performance needs to improve, and what we can do to support each other to do that. And you know, this will tie into things like the workforce planning group, where we know we've got resourcing issues in certain areas. We can use that forum to be able to divert resources to improve performance in that respect. Targets is the other one I wrote down. So at the moment, you know we're light on the targets, but the reason for that is that we don't have it a CRMP in place at the moment. So being able to really demonstrate the value that's being added here is about anchoring those targets within the CRMP so they're meaningful. So we are doing this because we've demonstrated through our CRMP this is the outcome it will have for the public, and it's almost like our contract with the public around how we will keep them safe. We will hold ourselves to account on these figures through the performance management framework. I wrote down accountability with that as well, so making sure that obviously accountability and empowerment at the right level is demonstrated through that performance management framework, and you know, people are clear on what it is that they are responsible for, but also feeding into, we've talked around strategic performance indicators in this forum, but what will come into the kind of subsection of this is local performance indicators. So once we have achieved that culture where people are really using data to understand what's going on with performance, we will be able to, at some stage, be able to use our systems to provide local data. So when you as an authority are scrutinizing us, we've got the kind of base work underneath that to be able to show you actually what makes up that KPI and how that's kind of further broken down at a local level as well. So there's lots that goes into it, and I think it is a step change within the service, but it's an exciting one. As you've said, Carl, with your excited face, I think it is one that we can really kind of use to springboard us into being a lot more kind of holding ourselves to account more for what it is that we say we're going to do. And I think that's quite motivational in itself as well, anyway. So there was quite a lot of questions that were kind of wrapped into one now, and hopefully that's given you a flavour of how we're using that performance management framework to kind of, you know, deliver better performance all around, essentially.
Okay, thank you. In that case, do we approve of the report?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's unanimous. Okay, thank you. In that case, that ends the report to decision, and we move on to the report for information and assurance. So it's the statutory consultation on our annual improvement objectives. Wayne, please.
Yes, thank you again, Chair. So this is a longer report. There's quite a long appendix attached to this one. This one is providing an overview of the annual strategy consultation we've undertaken around our proposed strategic improvement objectives for 26-27. We launched proposed objectives in the annual improvement plan, which is part 2 of the annual improvement cycle. When we look back at the year before, and we launched some initial proposed objectives, and then we go to statutory 12-week consultation. So this did provide an overview of what came in, what was the result of the consultation. So we presented the proposed objectives in September, and then we put a communications plan on how we were going to engage with staff and the public. That involved a couple of things. So we have a stakeholder register where we have known partners, partner agencies, and we have members of the public who previously opted in to be part of a stakeholder register. We asked them whether they want to be part of a decision-making consultation piece. We obviously promote then a digital version of a questionnaire on our social media channels and on websites. We've obviously designed some face-to-face feedback engagement sessions with staff as well, as staff across the service. And there was one public engagement session held in the middle of Cardiff city centre on a Friday. So we were hoping to catch a lot of foot traffic that way. So we're aiming to put front of the service and almost tell the public what we're thinking of doing. As an overview, there were some really positive elements to the consultations. And the first one was the number of overall people we engaged with, particularly face-to-face, very significantly. So it went from 80 to 279, and a lot of that was because of that focus group environment as opposed to that digital online survey. So a lot of people face-to-face were coming to us and wanting to have their opinions heard. You'll notice there was broad approval of the improvement objective. So over 80% of everyone we asked were more than happy with what we proposed. So that gives us some reassurance that what we're doing is what the public are expecting of us and staff. So there's nothing that came up that was majorly against what we've been planning, or nothing came up that was a surprise to anybody, which is always good. It was some good news as well that 80% of people who did engage with us and complete the consultation had stated that they'd read the plan. I think a lot of that comes down to the fact the team has written easy read version of the plans this year. So again, it's much more digestible and much more accessible. So 80% of the people that read the plan we wanted to put that capture information. We felt that would make a difference. And I think in the report we do break down what plans people have read. I think a lot were drawn to the easy read version. So that was a good. I think I'm pleased that the team looked at that and published it. And I noticed as well that with seven responses to the consultation in Welsh, compared to the 3 we had the previous year, which is small. It's a relatively big change, small number, but quite a big change. I think the one thing I will have to highlight though is obviously the number of online surveys we received again was very disappointing. So the year before we had 65, and this year we only had 37 responses to the digital survey. So we're not again. I need to evaluate why that was. I know we ran a staff survey around about the same time. And that was those two at some point would have run concurrently, or certainly one would just finished as one would have started. Luckily, the staff survey went first. So I think over 400 people completed the staff survey, which means they're probably less likely to complete a survey within a month, almost saying the same things. And I think the other one as well, I think based on the fact that the face-to-face engagement we've had being so much higher, and the digital engagement being much lower, I think this has given us a lot of food for thought about how we present the survey digitally. I'm not sure whether we asked too many questions, or maybe we asked for too much detail. So I think there's a lot of work, I think, with the team, and we certainly work with the media and communications and engagement team around how we can make that digital way of filling it in a bit more engaging, maybe a bit simpler, maybe a better way of capturing that data. Because again, I think to me that was probably the one disappointing statistic within the plan. I know obviously with the CRMP being launched in July, there'll be an element of consultation there. Now, what I hope what happens is if we can look at some ways of refining our digital way of engaging, and also I think in terms of the CRMP, I think the issues, there'll be a lot more information in there. I think it'll be a much bigger step change. I think our annual improvement objectives, they go on they're relatively consistent in terms of what we're doing, and there's very little contentious information in this survey. So I'm guessing maybe that doesn't draw the same engagement as maybe a much more wholesale plan around how we're maybe going to change things going forward. So I think we'll work together, I think, to get the CRMP consultation a bit more, trying to get a bit more traffic digitally. But overall, I think the consultation, again, the amount of people did engage was a lot higher. I also feel as well, maybe the focus group environment, people were much happier to air their views verbally. And then what we did try and do afterwards was try to get some of the digital version of the consultation, wherever they'd had the voices heard, and obviously the team taking notes, and we didn't have who was there. So I think again, that face-to-face engagement does bring a lot more, it brings a lot more people to you, and I think it did get to say what they wanted to say in a much freer way of doing it. But again, I think for me, the major piece of work is looking at that digital piece in terms of raising awareness and making it a bit more accessible. But there's an overall broad engagement with what we proposed to plan against. I'm more than happy to take it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Carl?
Yeah, few things. I feel for the sea, Wayne, because I know how much time and effort they put into it, and you still only get 279 people. And you know, when you look at the population of South Wales, that's not. It's still, and it's a bit like Groundhog Day, isn't it? It's great we've seen 80 to 279, but it's still only 279. And I think you're right. It probably just needs to think about, especially with Martin with the CRMP, we need to think about how we're going to do it, because 279 is not enough. We really want to get our community goal. And it kind of brings on to a second point that really, a query maybe going forward, is because we can get to our internal ones, you know, there's a risk, isn't it, that the response is then skewed by people that already know the service or have a view of the service, which is helpful in one context, but I think unhelpful in another. And maybe we need to think about that going forward. You wouldn't want to lose that internal voice, but it can have a negative impact or a positive impact depending where you go. Because when I read through the responses more broadly, I think the plan bit, brilliant, really engaging. But then you read through the actual individual responses, there was quite a lot of negativity of, you know, what has been the change, etc. And you can see the internal voice very strongly coming through that, really. So for me, a couple of queries, really. One, we are going to definitely, as you say, need to think about how we're going to get that external voice coming through more strongly. And I do question, when we do it again next year, do we need to kind of almost separate that internal voice and that external, if we're going to really get a community view of the plan rather than just an internal view of the plan? But that might be much more.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the choosing now was the face-to-face, wasn't it? The digital ones dropped. I think when I do surveys online, you get a survey for everything these days, so there's a bit of fatigue online. One of the things that always impacts on me is when I click that button on the bottom right, it's whether it takes me to another screen or whether that's the end of it. You sort of think sometimes it helps to know that you're on page 235 or it's 104. So I think there's a thing about making it, you know, a bit more understanding as to what the task is if we haven't done it already. But what struck me was that the face-to-face engagement had leapt up for one day of face-to-face engagement in Cardiff on a Friday. Now it's a 12-week process. I think Cardiff on a Saturday would have been busy. Cardiff on a Sunday would have been busy, or maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And Newport's got shopping centres and the Cardiff Ben's down the road. And there are lots of places we could have gone, because at the time the digital, we could work on the digital, but the face-to-face thing has gone up 300%. So, you know, there's 250%. So I think the face-to-face thing seems to have got a lot of responses, and they would be, to speak to Carl's point, not people who are in the organisation generally. So I think, yeah, there's some stuff to do.
Yeah, good point, thanks. Kirsty, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. It is really difficult, isn't it? To find new and better ways to encourage a response. But I do think as we approach what will be a really significant consultation in the summer, I think because of the nature of that consultation, there is where potentially we are talking about change, significant change, maybe. I don't want to anticipate what that will say, but I think probably that might, where there are hard and fast proposals, I think that might make a difference. And I think we will need to think about, as an organisation, I'm sure you already are, think very carefully about how we can engage in over those particular plans. I'm just a little bit concerned that will be a consultation that will be ready for July. August is really not a good time to be carrying out an exercise of that kind. And I wouldn't want us to be accused of trying to avoid scrutiny or avoid engagement by doing it over the summer months. So that's something maybe to factor in timescales around that work. The voice of our staff is really important, but and obviously we need to listen to that, but the voice of our staff have a variety of ways in which they can influence and let us know how they feel about the service. I think, you know, a really good think about how we engage with our service recipients is really important. And you know, and I wonder whether we can build on the good work that Lisa has done with our stakeholders, because what's really important is that we engage them not just on the finance, but actually, you know, on some of these wider strategic issues. And I wonder what we can learn from Lisa's work on the finance front to get that wider engagement with our local government stakeholder partners to be interested in that wider strategic piece. Thank you.
No, that's a really good point, Kirsty. And, you know, it's putting, if we reflect just slightly on the meeting we had with local authority leaders last Friday, it's getting that sense of, you know, this handover will be happening, and this is another opportunity for them to take some ownership and some engagement with their work with South Wales Fire, and, you know, to present it to the leaders and chief executives as, you know, we would like a response from you and from your staff. You know, they've all got staff networks within the 10 local authorities, and to get them to, you know, if we had 10 responses from each, that would be 100 extra responses, you know. So and these are the end users. Amanda, did you?
I was going to add basically the same point Kirsty just made, is that we're about to bring in new elected members this year. So this is an opportunity, and I know at my previous service we would be sharing the links for every consultation and saying, please ensure that you're promoting this within the greater unitary area. So I think that provides an opportunity for us that we haven't had previously. But those stronger links. I've also put out an offer to all the monitoring officers for our 10 unitary authorities to have a sort of a get together here, because I think once that secondary legislation is passed, we need to discuss that anyway. But let's start to get them much more involved, because I think previously it's been a little bit arm's length, and I just feel that we need to be much more working together.
So, you know, speaking as a former leader of one of those authorities, I had very, very little engagement with South Wales Fire previously, because it formed, you know, a very tiny part of my overall budget. I was assured that the councillors I put on the authority were engaging appropriately. I didn't have any cause for concern, and then suddenly, 2 years ago this week, we arrived here as a result of those causes for concern. You know, so if people aren't raising things with you, you don't know. You only know what you know. Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, with respect to CRMP consultation, so the conversations with communications is already taking place around that planning. Just for Commissioner's assurance, I'm just wondering whether you would like sight of a plan between now and the summer, a consultation plan that we can put in front of you, given the importance of it. So that plan is already starting to be drafted around how we are going to undertake the consultation. We won't have the questions yet until the CRMP has been done, but the conversations are taking place now that we can get in front of you in terms of that, if that would help.
Yeah, I think that would be extremely helpful. And then, if anything, Martin, we could perhaps, you know, add to it or support it in some way. You know, we have a line of sight on it that we could say, well, have you thought about this or thought about that? Because that's really what we'd like to do.
No. Absolutely, and that'd be most welcome as well. And obviously, with respect to timelines, there's been no fixed time in terms of when we would go out. Obviously, taking on board the Commissioner's view around the difficulty of when. Obviously, we've got elections this year, local elections next year. So I think a little bit of support and input from Commissioners on that and advice would be really good as well.
I think we know the political spectrum quite well between us. Kirsty, talking about political spectrum.
Martin, that would be really useful, I think, to have sight of those early drafts of what the communication plan will look like. you know, as a veteran of having to carry out sometimes difficult consultation exercises, it's that first engagement that can win or lose you the room, so to speak. So I think, you know, making sure that that consultation is really robust is important. I do wonder as well about how we can best support this communication strategy and our consultation via the PSB route as well, and making sure that we have an early opportunity to get this consultation onto PSB agendas, because I think again that will be a really important route that takes us beyond our strategic partners and local authorities, but gets us into the space then of both health and police, as the environment, you know, environmental groups, that gets us beyond our local authorities. So I think early engagement with PSB would also be really useful. Thank you.
Really good point, firstly. Thank you. Yeah, Martin?
Just on that. So yeah, that's been scheduled into the meeting. So we've already delivered to one PSB, Martin O'Keefe, one of our GMs. And obviously we're going through all 10 of them now as we speak.
Yeah, good, excellent. Okay, if there's nothing further on that item, so thank you, Wayne. It's engendered a good debate, and hopefully we've got some action plans coming out of it as well. So I move on to the final point, any items of urgent business, part 1 or part 2. I don't have any. So there appears to be none. In that case, the upper round door is available. Thank you very much for coming to the meeting. I declare the meeting closed.
Sexual chairing?
Yeah.
Well, I'm in a
Thank you, Debbie.
What?